The waitress hadn't even brought the drinks yet when my oldest daughter, by 3 minutes, announced it like she was ordering an appetizer. "We filed the name change today," she said, almost giddy. "We're Parkers now, like Mom and Greg. It just makes sense." I didn't drop my fork. I placed it down, calmly, precisely, like you would set aside a photograph of someone you realize you don't know anymore. Her twin chimed in before I could even blink. "I mean, he's been more of a real dad these past few years, anyway. No offense." She actually smiled when she said it, as if she thought I'd join in on the punchline. "Offense? No, sweetheart. Not taken. That ship didn't sail. It was hijacked, torched, and sunk. Somewhere between your orthodontist appointments and the 2 a.m. fevers I sat through while your mother played house in someone else's zip code." I looked at them, really looked. These two young women with faces I used to read bedtime stories to. Faces that once cried when I left for double shifts, now laughing about swapping out my name like it was a tired brand. You don't expect a betrayal to come with a smile, but there it was, gift-wrapped in dim restaurant lighting. "You're sure about that?" I asked, quiet, even. They nodded in tandem, completely unaware, and in that exact moment, I knew I had just exited fatherhood. Not biologically, not legally, but spiritually, emotionally, irrevocably. Hey, if you're listening to this and you've made it this far, pause for a second. If you're one of the 97% who listen without subscribing, maybe do it now. This story, it matters to someone. It mattered to me. Back to the table. They went on about how Greg, Dana's husband, had been there more recently, that he gets them, that he listens without judging. I nodded. I didn't challenge it. What would be the point? I had been fighting ghosts for years. Ghosts don't argue. They just haunt. To them, this was symbolic. A bonding gesture. A rebranding of the past. Something that could be undone with a phone call and a notarized form, if needed. But for me, it was a landmine they didn't know they'd stepped on. One I buried years ago, when their mother reappeared with gift baskets and freshly bleached teeth, acting like 15 years of silence could be canceled out by spa weekends and Taylor Swift tickets. Greg Parker, the man who once referred to me as the sperm donor at a barbecue. The man who always called me Rob, with that smug little wink like we were equals in a poker game I never agreed to play. The man who now got to walk them down the hallway of their new identity while I got this dinner. My steak sat untouched. I couldn't taste it anyway. Instead, I watched them giggle over a shared dessert. They kept checking their phones, probably posting some cutesy caption about new chapters or family bonds. The kind of posts that get 100 likes but not a single honest thought. When the check came, I paid without a word. No hug, no lecture, no farewell speech, just a receipt. And as we walked to the parking lot, my younger twin looped her arm through mine out of old habit. "Love you, Dad. Not Robert. Not the other guy. Not even you, Dad." I said it back, because even ghosts can echo. They drove off in Dana's SUV, a new vanity plate reading "Per Girls," sparkling under the brake lights. I sat in my truck a long time after that. Didn't start the engine. Just stared at my hands on the wheel. Hands that had built furniture for their dorms, fixed every broken drawer in their childhood room, typed every FAFSA form, signed every field trip waiver. And all I could think about was a clause. Clause 4.3a. A line I'd inserted into a document 5 years ago, on the advice of a lawyer who asked me, "Are you sure you want it this strict?" I had nodded then, just like they nodded tonight. They'd think it was symbolic. But paper doesn't care about symbols. And neither does legacy. Not anymore. The first time I heard the word "daddy" from their mouths, I was holding one of them in each arm, both screaming like fire alarms, both in diapers, and both leaking fluids from more orifices than I thought possible. Dana had said she was going for a drive. The drive turned into a voicemail. The voicemail turned into a decade and a half of silence. "I just can't do this." Her voice had trembled over the recording. "I need to be somewhere I feel like me again." That was it. No destination. No apology. Just a disappearing act that left me standing in the living room with formula on my shirt and 2 lives I wasn't remotely prepared to raise alone. But I did. I got up at 5 a.m. every day. Not because I'm a morning person, but because those lunchboxes weren't going to pack themselves, and toddlers don't wait for you to hit snooze. I learned how to braid hair. Watched YouTube tutorials with a toothbrush clenched between my teeth. I got decent at it, well, good enough that they didn't cry when I handed them the mirror. Most days, I still remember the smell of pine sol and popcorn in the elementary school gym. I never missed a single school play, even the ones where they had 3 lines and stood behind a cardboard tree. I clapped like they just cured cancer. It was our little ritual, me in the front row, phone in hand, them scanning the crowd for my face. And the nights? Graveyard shifts at the plant. 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 6 days a week. I'd get off, chug gas station coffee, and be home in time to flip pancakes. Sometimes I'd nod off with syrup still on my hands, but I never missed a morning drop-off. Not once. There was one time during a flu season from hell where both girls were vomiting every hour on the hour. I held bowls under their chins, wiped tears, changed sheets, and called in sick knowing I'd lose that day's wages. I did, and I'd do it again tomorrow. When I filed for full custody, the judge asked why I hadn't documented Dana's disappearance more aggressively, why I hadn't spoken against her. I remember leaning forward and saying, because they'll learn on their own. I'm not here to fight her. I'm here to be here. I never remarried, never brought another woman into their home. Not because I didn't want companionship, but because there were already too many ghosts in our house. No need to add confusion to chaos. Every Christmas gift, every birthday surprise, every scraped knee, every, "Dad, can we talk?" moment. I was there, building something, quietly, brick by brick. A life, a bond, a damn fortress of trust, or so I thought. And I'll be honest, there were cracks. I saw them. Subtle things, especially after they turned 16. A weird hesitance to introduce me to certain friends. Dana suddenly sending gifts with love, mom tags. Greg's name slipping into conversations more and more. I heard the strain in their voices when they said, "Dad," like it was being negotiated in real time. But I waited. I didn't lecture, didn't beg, just waited. Patience isn't passivity. That's something people don't understand. Waiting is a strategy if you play it right. And I had played it right. For 15 years. I never needed to be the hero. Just the constant. So while Dana took them to malls and pretended she still remembered their birthdays, I was rebuilding the garage door they slammed every afternoon. I was checking the oil in the car they forgot to thank me for. I was making sure the tuition didn't come with strings. And somewhere in that time, when I realized love wasn't about being seen, but staying, I made a decision. A single clause. In a document no one ever asked about. Because while they were learning how to pronounce Parker, I was learning how to leave nothing to chance. It wasn't bitterness. It was math. If they ever forgot who built the house, maybe, just maybe, the paperwork would remind them. It started with a Facebook message. Of course it did. "Hey, I was thinking we could all try being a family again. The girls are old enough to decide." No apology. No acknowledgement of the years she disappeared, the birthdays she missed, or the fact that I had to learn how to delouse hair during that second-grade outbreak without ever having seen a lice comb before. Just a warm little virtual olive branch from the woman who ghosted us into chaos and then decided the girls were finally palatable enough to parade around like trophies. I didn't answer her message, but she didn't need me to. She had already started her campaign. The girls turned 16 that fall, and suddenly there were spa weekends, makeup bags with receipts still tucked inside, and photos of them holding Starbucks in front of some beach house I'd never seen. Dana's house, or rather Greg Parker's house. He was a real estate guy, local developer, flashy smile, every shirt just a bit too tight. I remember the first time I met him. It was at one of the school fundraisers, the kind with wine in plastic cups and a silent auction table full of expired gift certificates. He strutted over in a blazer with elbow patches and a Bluetooth earpiece that he didn't even bother removing. "They're great girls," he said, like he had discovered them. "Shame you kept them from us all those years." I took a breath, looked him in the eye. "Kept? Or carried?" He laughed, thought it was witty, probably used to people backing down when he turned on the charm. But I didn't blink. Dana was worse in a way. She didn't insult me to my face. She just erased me, brick by brick. At one point, I heard her call Greg, "Dad," in front of them. Just slipped it in casually. "Ask Dad if he'll drive you back." No flinch. No correction from the girls. Just a seamless replacement of reality. Like history could be rewritten with enough brunches and matching sweaters. The girls started saying things like, "Greg understands us," and "It's easier to talk to him." I nodded, smiled, even asked how the trips were. Let them show me pictures. Pretended I was just so happy they were loved. But inside, I took notes. Dana started pushing harder. It's important they see both sides. You've had them long enough. Had them? I don't have them like furniture, Dana. I raised them. Like crops, like stone, like fire. Through scraped knees, screaming matches, sobbing over math homework, slammed doors, quiet apologies, and late-night ramen on the porch when the power went out. I didn't have them. I grew with them. But again, I didn't say any of this. Not out loud. Not yet. Instead, I made tea. Took photos of their new clothes, the jewelry Dana bought. Listened as they talked about Greg's promotion and the ski cabin they'd all be visiting in December. I even drove them to her house once. Watched them walk up the stone steps while Greg opened the door like the king of a kingdom I built from scratch and handed over. He didn't wave. Just looked past me like I was the valet. The problem with Greg and Dana wasn't that they were trying to take the girls. It was that they assumed they already had. They forgot that I don't raise victims. I raise observers. And when you give observers enough rope, they don't swing, they see. Still, Dana tried to assert control. She offered to split expenses now that the girls were older. We can all contribute, she said sweetly, as if that would undo 16 years of silence and carpool logistics. I told her, they've never gone without. What I didn't tell her was that while she was discovering yoga and Malibu tans, I was meeting with attorneys and reviewing estate strategies. That I had created something bigger than inheritance. I had created intent. A roadmap. One with clear signposts and a locked gate that only opens for those who understand where they came from. Greg once handed me a scotch at an awards ceremony. To second chances, he grinned. I clinked the glass. To built-in expiration dates. He didn't get it. He never would. Because this wasn't about being liked. Or remembered. Or even thanked. It was about outlasting them. Quietly. Decisively. And without raising my voice. Let Dana play mom again. Let Greg try on the title like a new Rolex. They were playing dress-up. I was writing the ending. It was never about revenge. Not when I first drafted it. Back then, the twins were only 11. Still coming to me with scraped palms and science fair disasters. Still falling asleep on the couch with their heads in my lap after movie nights. Dana was a ghost. Greg wasn't even a footnote yet. It was just me, them, and the future I knew I wouldn't always be around to shape. The land had sat in probate for nearly 6 years after my grandfather passed. Stubborn man, refused to sell a single acre while alive. Land ain't for cashing in. It's for handing down, he used to say while chewing sunflower seeds and watching the sunset from the back porch. But after the oil company discovered what lay beneath those forgotten Kansas fields, everything changed. The trust fund I could never afford to imagine. Suddenly, it was real, concrete, and worth protecting. That's when I called Eleanor. She was my brother David's widow. If Dana was a gust of wind, Eleanor was steel. A former CPA who ran a local library like it was the Pentagon. She'd been executor on David's estate and once corrected a bank's math to their embarrassment. She didn't smile much, but when she did, it felt like truth. We met at her house. Formica kitchen table, 2 mugs of black coffee, notepads spread like war maps. I told her what I was planning. I want to create an educational trust for the girls, I said. Enough to pay for any school they choose. Grad school, med school, hell, pastry school if that's what lights them up. But I want one clause. Just one. She raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Behavior clause? Grades? No tattoos before 30. Clause 4.3a, I said. Beneficiaries must retain the legal surname Whitaker until they're 25. If they change it before that, for any reason, they're out. No exceptions. She didn't flinch. Just wrote it down. You want me to be trustee? I nodded. And I want you to enforce it. Without emotion. Without negotiation. She stared at me a long time before speaking. You're expecting something. I'm preparing, I said. It was filed within the month. Signed. Notarized. Quietly integrated into the documents I kept in the fireproof safe behind the basement panel. I told the girls about the trust in general terms, explained it was for their future, for college, for opportunity. I never lied. But I didn't volunteer the clause either. Why would I? At the time, it felt like locking your door in a safe neighborhood. Just common sense. But the truth? I wasn't locking them out. I was locking others in, ensuring that if anyone came into their lives later, someone with charm and a big smile and a house filled with granite countertops, they couldn't rewrite the story with a signature and a notary stamp. The Whitaker name wasn't just mine, it was my father's and his father's. It was the name on every drawing they ever hung on the fridge, the name I called out during swim meets and spelling bees. It was the name I whispered while pacing hospital floors during their appendectomies. I wasn't preserving vanity. I was preserving truth. I never expected gratitude, but I damn well expected memory. I updated the documents every year, added letters of intent, instructions, even a digital vault. Eleanor kept meticulous records. She called me once to clarify a line in the secondary clause regarding postgraduate extensions. I told her, make it strict, no loopholes, no sentimental appeals. If the name changes, they're ineligible. Period. They'll be furious if it happens. I said, let them be furious. That's better than forgetting. The thing is, I never assumed they would change it. Not really. The girls had always been proud of our little family unit. Every Father's Day card, every inside joke, every burnt dinner we laughed through together. It all carried the quiet echo of us. The idea that they'd erase that with a form and a fee? Unthinkable. Until it wasn't. Until dinner that night, when they smiled and told me they were Parkers now. Clause 4.3a. 5 characters, 1 decision, and a lifetime of wait. They thought it was symbolic. They didn't realize the vault had already sealed behind them. The toast popped up while I was still staring at the eggs. I hadn't taken a bite yet. There was something about the silence that morning. Like the air knew something I didn't. But the smell of burnt wheat snapped me out of it, and I turned to kill the toaster just as my phone buzzed. Instagram. I never used it much. I had it to track the school's announcements and maybe see the odd birthday photo they forgot to send me directly. But today, the notification sat bold and bright, tagged in a photo. My thumb hovered over it. I already knew. Tap. There they were. My daughters, my girls, in matching sundresses, beaming beside Dana and Greg in front of a freshly planted tree in the Parkers' front yard. Balloons tied to the trunk. A cake in the foreground. Dana in her usual too-white smile. Greg in his salmon polo shirt that probably cost more than my truck's monthly insurance. The caption read, officially a Parker family, now 2 hearts grateful for this new chapter raising hands #new beginnings #family, first #Parker strong. Family. First. I stared at the screen a long time. My eggs went cold. Coffee untouched. The sun slid across the counter like it didn't notice. I wasn't tagged directly. Just mentioned in a comment by one of Dana's friends. So happy for you all. What does Robert think? Grimacing face. No one replied. I didn't comment. I didn't text. I didn't call. Instead, I reached for the small black folder I kept in the kitchen drawer. The one labeled, Trust Active. Inside, login credentials, trustee contact info, clause summaries, timestamps. I opened my laptop, entered the portal, verified 2-step authentication. There they were, Whitaker, Charlotte, and Whitaker, Elise. Still eligible. For now. I clicked into each profile. A small drop-down menu blinked beside their names. Edit beneficiary status. I clicked it. Reason for status change? Manual override clause 4.3. A legal surname no longer Whitaker prior to age 25. I typed the date. Attached a screenshot of their name change announcement. Uploaded the county court file that had been updated 2 weeks ago. Public record. The same one they thought no one but their mother and stepfather would ever bother reading. A digital paper trail. Cross-referenced. Verified. Immutable. I submitted the changes. Status updated. Ineligible. The trustees portal locked the profiles. Final. Automatic notice generated. Delayed delivery, 2 weeks. Just enough time for their new names to feel normal. I closed the laptop, pushed away the plate, washed the fork. Then I sat. Not angry, not even sad. Just still. Because this wasn't a reaction. This wasn't some petty emotional overreach. This was a filing. Procedure. A box checked on a timeline I'd drawn 5 years earlier when they still cried about monsters under the bed. I had mapped this out before Dana bought her first pair of gilt earrings. Before Greg's ego ever reached our front porch. They never saw the trap. Because I never baited it. I didn't need to. The clause was never about punishment. It was about protection. Of memory. Of meaning. Of everything that name had carried on its back while they grew into people I barely recognized. I made another cup of coffee. Toasted fresh bread. Ate in silence. Their post was getting hundreds of likes. I didn't refresh it again. Outside, a breeze moved the branches of the maple I planted when they were born. It had split once during a storm, but I tied the limbs together, nurtured it through frost and drought. It grew twisted but strong. That tree never changed its name. It arrived on a Thursday. Thick envelope. No return logo, just the trustee's address in plain font. Both girls got one. White cardstock. Heavy. The kind you use when you want the words to feel like they weigh something. Charlotte opened hers in the car. Elise waited until she got to the kitchen table. According to Elise, because they didn't call me, of course. She thought it was a scholarship confirmation. Some kind of final disbursement packet. She even texted her mom a picture of the envelope, saying, "Finally!" But the moment she pulled the document free, her smile cracked. One paragraph in, it collapsed entirely. Notice of disqualification from Educational Legacy Trust. Effective immediately. She reread it. Out loud, apparently. 3 times. Charlotte snatched hers, skimmed it in full silence, then just said, No, this is a mistake. It's a mistake. But it wasn't. Clause 4.3, A beneficiaries must retain the legal surname Whitaker until age 25. Change your name? You change your eligibility. Black ink. White paper. Not up for interpretation. They called Dana first. I imagine the phone shook in her hand. She'd seen my name on those documents years ago. Tucked into a folder she probably flipped through while half watching HGTV. She didn't read the clause then. She thought educational trust meant blank checks from a man who would never say no. Wrong. The next morning, Dana showed up at Eleanor's office without an appointment. Walked straight in. High heels on tile, voice pitched with that mix of entitlement and fear. You sent these to my daughters? She snapped, waving the letters like they were subpoenas. Eleanor barely looked up from her desk. Yes. Dana dropped them on the table. This is insane. Rob can't just revoke their funding like this. They're already enrolled. They've picked their dorms. They're not enrolled through the trust, Eleanor replied, matter of fact. They were beneficiaries. Past tense. Clause 4.3a was triggered. Eligibility terminated. Dana leaned in like proximity would change the outcome. That clause is ridiculous. What does a name have to do with anything? They're still his daughters. Eleanor turned the page in her binder, already prepared. The clause was filed and signed. Your daughters acknowledged receipt of the trust documents on their 17th birthday. Your signature was on the delivery confirmation. Dana paused. They didn't read the whole thing. They were kids. They're legal adults now, Eleanor said. And this isn't a misunderstanding. It's administration. Dana stared. You're really going to let them walk away from college because of a last name? No, Eleanor said coolly. They walked away. Later that day, Greg called. Tried charm first. Called Eleanor darlin'. Tried joking about lawyers. That died fast. Then came the threats. You know who I am in this town? I've got legal teams that will turn this into a circus. Eleanor waited for him to finish, then asked, Are your legal teams going to argue that your stepdaughters should be entitled to a trust they contractually forfeited? Click. No call back. The panic reached me through silence. Not a word from the girls. But I saw the smoke from across the valley. The Instagram post slowed. The hashtags faded. There were no more pictures in matching Parker jerseys. No more latte shots with Dana tagged. Just quiet. I imagined them in their rooms, laptops open, trying to calculate new tuition totals. Googling emergency student aid. Crying behind locked doors. And what did I feel? Not joy. Not vengeance. Just finality. Because panic always arrives late to people who think consequences are optional. And unfortunately for them, I wrote the consequences down. The first time Dana called, I let it go to voicemail. The second time I picked up because I wanted to hear her say it out loud. You need to fix this, she snapped before I could say hello. They're both devastated. You've made your point. Now undo it. I stirred my coffee slowly. Undo what? This trust nonsense. They're crying. Elise locked herself in the bathroom. Charlotte's talking about deferring. You're tearing your daughters apart over a technicality. A technicality. Clause 4.3, The clause I spent months reviewing with lawyers, scrubbing it for any loophole that someone like Dana might someday try to squeeze through, was now just a technicality. They made a decision, I said. So did I. Years ago. They're kids, Robert. They're 18. Adults. The same adults you said could decide for themselves when you re-entered their lives waving gift bags and ski passes. Silence. I could hear her breathing. Sharp, shallow. Then, Greg's furious. That almost made me laugh. I pictured him pacing around that oversized kitchen of his, probably barking orders at some assistant to pull every damn Whitaker document from the registry. Like money could argue with a signature. I'm sure he is, I said. Dana lowered her voice, switching tactics. Do you even care that they might lose their spots? Financial aid was calculated assuming the trust payout. It's thousands short now. They don't qualify for more because the trust still shows them as recipients in the FAFSA system. That's going to take months to correct. And by then, I let her trail off. She knew what she was saying. They wouldn't just lose scholarships, they'd lose enrollment. And none of that, I said carefully, occurred to you when you helped them file the name change? I could hear it in her throat. Regret curdling into defiance. It was a name, a gesture. They wanted to feel unified. They wanted to feel fashionable, I replied. Like the past didn't cost anything. Like rewriting 15 years of sacrifice was as easy as reprinting a driver's license. Then the tears came. Not hers. Charlotte's. She called 2 hours later. Voice trembling. I could tell she'd been crying for a while. Dad? She began. I stayed quiet. I didn't think you'd... Her voice cracked. I thought you'd be mad. But I didn't think you'd let us fall. I bit my cheek. Hard. Because part of me wanted to fold. To throw them a life raft like I had 100 times before. Band-aids on knees. Tire changes in the dark. Late-night runs for poster board they forgot they needed. I had always been the net. But this time, I had become the floor. You didn't fall, I said. You walked. I didn't close a door. You opened another, and stepped through. I didn't know it would matter, but it did. Because it always did. Greg called next. Blunt. Condescending. You think this is some moral win? They're your kids. Not soldiers in some estate pissing match. I laughed. You don't get to lecture me about parenting, Greg. You showed up at the credits and called yourself a writer. You're being cruel. No, I said. Cruel was watching them cry for their mother every Christmas while I stayed up wrapping gifts she never sent. Cruel was fielding every question they had about why she left, without ever once saying a bad word about her. Cruel was 15 years of silence. And now? Now you want me to act like none of that happened because you bought a matching set of bathrobes. There was nothing on the line after that. Just silence. The kind that meant something was finally sinking in. The kind that said he's not going to cave. And I wasn't. Because this wasn't about punishing them. This was about honoring the man I used to be. The one who stood by them when it was hard, messy, unrewarded. That man deserved to be remembered. Even if it was through absence. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. A cousin tagged me in a vague Facebook post about parents who weaponize money. A former neighbor commented under one of Charlotte's old softball photos with a crying emoji and the words, "So sad to see what greed can do to a family." One of Elisa's friends shared a TikTok montage of the girls growing up, set to a melancholy song, captioned, "He used to be her hero. Used to be." And yet, between the posts and pity, a second current began to ripple underneath. Quieter, but stronger. My sister, who never involved herself in drama, posted a simple status. He raised them alone, paid for everything, cried in private. Now he's the villain? Wild. An old coworker from the plant sent me a message I didn't expect. Remember when you missed our bonus dinner because Elise had a fever? I do. We all do. Just thought you should know. And then there was Aunt Janice. God bless Janice. She replied directly under the most accusatory comment thread. Something Dana had liked, of course, and wrote, "I was there when Dana left. I babysat when Rob had to work 2 jobs. I watched him wash uniforms at 2 a.m. Let's not pretend he's the one who disappeared." No response. Just silence. From that point on, the tone changed. Not dramatically, but noticeably. People still whispered, but now it was with caution. As if they were remembering details they'd chosen to forget. Memories resurfacing like artifacts after a tide goes out. The years where I showed up alone to every recital. The birthdays where I brought the cake and cut the slices and cleaned up after while Dana couldn't make it. Elisa's guidance counselor, Ms. Harmon, emailed me. I hadn't heard from her in years. The subject line, "Just want to say something. Mr. Whitaker," it began. "I heard about the trust situation. I'm not reaching out to debate or argue. I just want to say this. They didn't know. They genuinely didn't understand what they were giving up. But I think they know now." She ended with, "You were always steady. That matters. even when they pretend it doesn't. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say that wouldn't cheapen it. But I printed that email, folded it, tucked it into the same fireproof folder as the trust documents. A keepsake of quiet validation. The girls stopped posting for a while. No new Parker hashtags. No vacation selfies. Just digital silence. Elisa's LinkedIn still said Whitaker, though maybe she hadn't updated it. Or maybe she was afraid of who would notice if she did. I knew they were hurting. I didn't need updates to tell me that. Pain echoes when you know its original shape. One night, I overheard a conversation at the grocery store. Two parents whispering near the cereal aisle. I only caught the end of it. I mean, sure, it's strict. But honestly, if my kids tried something like that, I don't know if I'd be that calm. That calm. They didn't know I'd screamed. Alone, in my truck the night I saw that post. They didn't see the dishes I shattered. The letter I almost wrote and burned instead. Calm wasn't my nature. It was my decision. Every day. A choice to hold the line while everyone else moved the goalposts. So yeah, let them whisper. Let them argue. But slowly, even the critics stopped biting. Because once enough people remember what you actually did, when they put together the late shifts, the school lunches, the emergency room waits, the birthday cakes you paid for with rolled quarters, your silence becomes credibility. And mine? It had weight now. More than any hashtag ever could. They arrived together. Not with Dana this time, and not in Greg's shiny Escalade. Charlotte was driving her old Honda, the one I gave her at 17. Elise sat stiff in the passenger seat, clutching something against her chest. From the window, I saw it was a manila folder. Even from across the yard, I could guess what was inside. They didn't ring the bell right away. Just stood on the porch like they were remembering things. Maybe the times they sat there in Halloween costumes, or the afternoons they kicked off their muddy soccer cleats before coming inside. I didn't open the door. Not yet. I watched through the curtain until Charlotte raised her hand, hesitated, then finally knocked. I took my time answering. "Hey, Dad," Elise said. Soft, smaller than I remembered. They were dressed modestly. No accessories, no matching necklaces Dana used to insist on. Just plain sweatshirts. College logos barely visible. We wanted to talk," Charlotte added. I stepped aside without a word and let them in. They sat at the kitchen table like it was a courtroom. Elise placed the folder in front of me, gently, like it might detonate. Charlotte spoke first. "We went to the courthouse last week. These are the reversal forms. We're legally changing our names back to Whitaker." Elise jumped in. We didn't understand what it meant, what we were giving up. "It's not about the money," Charlotte added quickly. "I mean, it is, but it's also not. We just want to make it right." I opened the folder. They'd done it properly. Filed with the county, notarized, pending final stamp. All it needed now was confirmation to the trustee. My confirmation. I looked at them. Really looked. They weren't children anymore. Their faces carried stress they didn't have a year ago. Tension around the eyes. That weight people carry when they realize no one is coming to fix it. That dad isn't a guarantee, he's a person. With limits. "Please," Elise said. "We're sorry." I nodded. "I know. So, will you call the trustee?" Charlotte asked. "Will you tell her we're reinstated?" I folded the forms back up and placed them in front of me. "I didn't build a trap," I said quietly. "I built a standard. One you walked away from." They froze. "I didn't hide clause 4.3a. I didn't manipulate you. I didn't wave it like a weapon. I built it while you were still in ponytails and braces because I knew that someday, someone might try to replace truth with convenience. That someone might hand you a shiny new name and a mansion full of curated affection and expect me to keep paying for the privilege of being erased." They said nothing. Elise blinked fast. Charlotte stared at her hands. "Changing your name back now?" I continued. "It's not redemption. It's negotiation. And I don't negotiate with regret." "But we're trying," Elise said. "Isn't that worth something?" "It is," I said. "It's worth exactly what it teaches you. That actions have echoes. And sometimes, they last longer than apologies." Charlotte stood up abruptly. "So that's it? You're just done with us?" "No," I said. "I'm not done. I'm just no longer your safety net." She sat down again, slower this time. "I'll always be your father," I said. "But that trust? That was my voice on paper. And just like you chose not to listen before, I'm choosing not to rewrite it now." They didn't cry. Not this time. They understood. Eventually, they stood and left, the folder still sitting on the table. When the door closed, I didn't move for a long time. My hands stayed folded. My heart beat slow and quiet. Even repentance has limits. Not because forgiveness is impossible, but because sometimes the lesson has to be. The auditorium was packed, the air thick with perfume, sweat, and the buzzing static of 1,000 families trying to outcheer one another. Caps decorated with glitter and inside jokes wobbled on excited heads. Names echoed off the walls, each syllable followed by an eruption of applause. And then came hers. Ariana June Carter, Robert Whittaker Scholarship recipient. The moment froze. She stepped forward, head high, her braids tied back in a blue ribbon, trembling just slightly as she took the envelope. Her eyes flicked across the audience, and when they found me, she smiled. Not the kind of smile you give a donor. The kind you give a lighthouse. No one else clapped as loudly as I did. Ariana had come into my life 2 years earlier, through a mentoring program for foster teens. She was 14 then, all elbows and attitude. Every word a challenge. Every silence louder than a scream. But over time, she started asking questions instead of throwing them. Started writing essays that made my throat tighten. Started dreaming out loud. When the trust clause was triggered and the funds frozen for my daughters, I contacted Eleanor the next week. "I have a new name for you," I said. She didn't even ask who. Just said, "I'll send the paperwork." Clause 6.1 B. Discretionary reassignment in case of beneficiary forfeiture. I wrote it into the original draft years ago, not because I expected to use it, but because I knew legacy can't just be passed down. It has to be chosen by someone ready to carry it. Ariana didn't ask for anything. She didn't know the money was even available until the day the envelope arrived with her acceptance letter. All she knew was someone believed in her enough to remove every obstacle she thought was permanent. After the ceremony, a local paper ran a short piece. Local father honors his legacy through community impact. They'd snapped a photo of us after the award. Ariana in her gown. Me in a plain blazer I hadn't worn since the twins' 8th grade graduation. The caption under the photo said, "Robert Whittaker, proud sponsor and father." Dana saw it. I know because she clipped it and folded it neatly, tucked it into a drawer with a yellowed article about Charlotte's first spelling bee win. She didn't say a word. Neither did the girls. The silence wasn't angry anymore. It was hollow. A kind of quiet that comes when you realize the ending already happened and you missed your line. They had erased my name. But I didn't need to chase it, because now it lived somewhere else. Etched into Ariana's diploma, into her future classrooms, into the shoulders of every student she would one day help rise up, just like I helped her. One evening, weeks later, I found a letter taped to my front door in unfamiliar handwriting. "I don't know what I did to deserve this, but I promise I'll make you proud. I won't waste your name. Love, Ariana." I sat on the porch a long time after that. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the yard. The maple tree rustled behind me, the one that never changed its name. Inside, the house was still, quiet, but the silence didn't feel empty anymore. Felt complete.